If you're joining us today, you're likely here for one reason and one reason only. To understand how the mighty have fallen. And, well, fallen so hard. Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Hello there.
This is the place where we take those massive headlines, we rip through the surface, and we try to extract the genuinely startling insights that, tell the full story.
And today, gosh, where do we even begin? We are talking about a footballing phenomenon that has just curdled into a nightmare. We're talking about Liverpool.
We are. Just a few months ago, they were the reigning Premier League champions, weren't they? Basking in that glow of a domestic title.
And now, well, the sources in front of us, they paint a pretty devastating picture. It all follows their 3-0 defeat at Anfield to a newly resurgent Nottingham Forest side.
Yeah, and this isn't just a loss of 3 points. It's being universally labeled, and explicitly so, as a full-blown crisis.
That's the exact phrase being used.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to really unpack the sheer brutality of this result. We've got comprehensive match details, some astonishing historical statistics that put this collapse right into context.
And then they are astonishing.
We've also got the public reaction from the manager, Arne Slot, and crucially, the intense, raw, and sometimes, contradictory reaction coming directly from the supporter threads online.
Right.
We're aiming to give you the complete picture of how a powerhouse club can hit rock bottom seemingly overnight.
And look, if you need just one single defining piece of data to understand the gravity of this deep dive, let it be this.
Go on.
Liverpool, the current champions, have now lost 6 of their past 7 Premier League games.
6 of 7.
6 of 7. Now, to put that into context, they had only lost that same number of matches across their previous 58 league games combined.
58, wow.
That statistical crash, that complete transformation from near invincibility to, routine defeat, that's the engine driving this entire crisis narrative.
That number 6 losses in 7 is genuinely staggering. It doesn't even sound real. And before we get into the nuts and bolts of the match, we should probably define a metric we'll be using quite a bit today.
Good idea.
It features heavily in the reports and especially in the fan critiques, and it's the user rating.
Right.
So when we mention a player's user rating, what we're referring to is the aggregated fan scores compiled by several leading sports sites. It's essentially the collective emotional verdict of the audience on a player's performance, rated out of 10.
And you'll see those numbers are alarmingly low for the Liverpool squad in this one.
They really are. Okay, let's get straight into it. The match in detail.
A result of embarrassing ease.
Right. So let's get into the chronology of the defeat itself, because the final score, Liverpool 0, Nottingham Forest 3, it tells the story of a team that had all of the control but absolutely none of the punch.
None at all.
So what was the timeline? How did these goals systematically just extinguish the fire at Anfield?
Well, it was a classic death by 1,000 cuts scenario, really. It played out in 3 distinct phases that just seemed designed to crush the hopeful, but you could tell already anxious, atmosphere at Anfield.
Anxious even before kickoff.
Oh, definitely. The recent form meant that the usual confidence just wasn't there. And actually, Arne Slot noted in his post-match comments that the team started okay, for the first half hour or so.
Right.
They had possession, they were moving the ball. But the fragility, that mental lapse, it was just waiting to happen.
And that lapse was defensive, wasn't it? Stemming from a perennial weakness that has just plagued them all season.
Precisely. The opening goal arrives in the 33rd minute.
And it's Murillo.
Murillo from a corner kick. And this is immediately critical because it taps straight into this huge, correctable, systemic flaw in the team.
Their set-piece defending.
It's a shambles. Liverpool's defensive frailty from set pieces is becoming a defining feature of their season. The reports detail that the movement for the goal was simple, the marking was slack.
Non-existent, some would say.
You could say that. And Murillo, who, to be fair, had an outstanding game, he just converted it with confidence.
And once you go 1-0 down at home to a team like Forest, you can just feel the air go out of the stadium.
Instantly. The pressure just shifts. The fans' anxiety just compounds the players' tension on the pitch. It's a horrible cycle.
So it's 1-0 at the break, a tense dressing room, a chance for Slot to, refocus his players. But then we hit the second phase, the moment that truly killed the game.
And maybe the manager's immediate credibility with some fans, yeah.
It was just so fast.
Devastatingly fast. 47 seconds.
47 seconds.
That's how long it took after the restart for the game to move from disappointment to outright disaster. Nicolas Savona scores, and he's assisted by former Liverpool defender Neco Williams.
Oh, of course. That always adds that cruel little
It
twist.
always does, doesn't it? But to concede within the first minute of the second half, especially at home, I mean, that suggests a total failure of concentration, of preparation, of intensity coming out of that dressing room.
47 seconds is not just bad defending. It suggests the team was psychologically absent. The cop must have just been stunned into silence.
The reports describe the atmosphere as switching from that anxious noise before halftime to a profound, almost sickening silence right after that second goal went in.
Wow.
It just stuns the spirit of the place. And once you're 2-0 down at home, the desperate gambles have to start.
You have to chase the game.
You have to push, which creates space, and that just allowed Forest to complete the job.
And they did.
Oh.
Morgan Gibbs White applies what the sources aptly call the coup de grace.
Yep, in the 78th minute. At that point, the outcome was settled. Fans were heading for the exits, and the psychological damage was complete.
Okay, now this is where we need to transition to that statistical irony we mentioned earlier. Because if you just read the box score, the basic stats, you'd probably assume Liverpool won this game 3-0.
It's so misleading.
The numbers are just, they don't make sense.
They're baffling, which is exactly why we have to unpack them. Liverpool dominated possession.
To an almost absurd degree.
74.4% compared to Forest's 25.6%.
Right, and passes.
They completed 616 passes. Forest completed 213. Now, these stats, they scream high-controlled, dominant football. They suggest the team was executing Slot's possession-based game plan effectively.
So how on earth do you reconcile 74% possession with a 0-3 defeat? This is the core issue that defines the crisis, isn't it?
It absolutely is. This is the whole thing in a nutshell. Control does not equal threat. Liverpool's problem is efficiency and penetration. They had 21 shots overall, which suggests they were getting into, dangerous-ish areas.
21 shots should be enough to score.
It should be, but only 4 of those shots were actually on target.
4 from 21. That's terrible.
It's dreadful. It means 17 shots were blocked, sailed wide, or were just easily saved. This is the very definition of a limp and toothless display that the sources keep mentioning.
And we've got the expected goals metric as well, the XG, which quantifies the quality of the chances they created.
Correct. And even that tells a story of failure. Liverpool generated an XG of 2.02.
Okay, so in simple terms, based on the positions and the circumstances of their 21 shots, they should statistically have scored 2 goals.
Exactly 2 goals, but they scored 0.
Right.
And this highlights a failure right across the board. It's a failure of finishing, it's a failure of conviction in front of goal, and it's just poor decision-making when the pressure was highest.
Now let's contrast that with Nottingham Forest. They barely had the ball, but when they did, they were, surgical?
They were brutally efficient. I mean, Forest had a lower XG of 1.4, yet they scored 3 goals.
So they overperformed their XG massively.
Massively. They didn't flood the goal with volume. They focused on quality and precision. They managed 7 shots on target out of their 15 attempts.
Which is a much, much higher ratio of accuracy than Liverpool's.
A world away.
Oh.
And this is classic, efficient, you could say, Dyche ball football. Capitalize on your opponent's mistakes and take your chances with clinical precision when they arrive.
It speaks volumes about the lack of clinical edge at Anfield right now. But I want to dissect that XG of 2.02 a bit more. If they really created chances worth 2 goals, why did they fail so spectacularly? Was it genuinely just bad luck, or was it poor technique?
The sources all suggest it was overwhelmingly poor technique and execution under duress.
The pressure got to them.
It did. You see, high XG can be accumulated by taking a lot of shots from pretty good areas, say just outside the 6-yard box. But if those shots are just hit straight at the goalkeeper or rushed, they have a low conversion probability despite a high spatial value on the XG map.
So they're getting into the right spots but fluffing their lines.
Exactly. We are seeing a complete lack of composure. Key players are snatching at chances, rushing their efforts, and failing to pick a corner. This suggests a mental fragility has well and truly set in where once there was just icy confidence.
We do also have to give proper credit to Nottingham Forest and their manager, Sean Dyche. They weren't just passive spectators to Liverpool collapse.
Oh, absolutely not. They were actively disrupting Liverpool's attempted control.
This wasn't just Liverpool failing. This was a well-drilled Forest side executing a near-perfect defensive game plan.
It was. Dyche has clearly revitalized them. He's made them uncompromising and physical, as the reports say. They were extremely effective in that midfield battle.
And the key man there, besides the goal scorer Murillo, was Ibrahim Sangare.
Yeah, he absolutely dominated the central areas. He broke up play. He was physically imposing. He was everything Liverpool's midfield wasn't on the day.
And Maria was named player of the match, even scoring, which just speaks to how effective their whole strategy was.
It does. I mean, Mario's user rating, that fan aggregated score, was a magnificent 8.85 out of 10.
Miles ahead of anyone in a red shirt.
A different planet. He was defensively immense, he scored the opener, and he just symbolized the physical barrier that Forest put up. They were organized, they were powerful, and they exploited the exact weakness that Liverpool currently possesses.
That soft underbelly.
That's the phrase. That soft underbelly that just collapses when it's physically challenged or when it's facing disciplined counterattacks. Forest essentially allowed Liverpool to pass the ball laterally and centrally, have all the sterile possession they wanted.
But they just shut down all the dangerous passing lanes into the final third.
Completely. It was a tactical masterclass in soaking up useless pressure and being ruthless on the break.
So to sum up the match itself, Liverpool played slow, sideways football, failed to convert the few genuine chances they created, and defensively were a disaster on set pieces. Meanwhile, Forest were ruthless, organized, and physically imposing.
That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And that sets the stage perfectly for the discussion about the individual players involved.
Right, because when a team with 74% possession loses 3-0, the blame shifts immediately from the system, which is control, to the personnel, which is execution.
Mm-hmm.
And this brings us straight to the problematic new signings and, well, the elephant in the room.
Mm-hmm.
The massive transfer spend of nearly $450 million this summer.
And the centerpiece of this transfer critique, as highlighted extensively in all the source material, is Alexander Isak.
The British record signing. $125 million.
A huge, huge sum. And manager Slot took a big gamble starting him. The sources say he was explicitly trying to fire up his struggling side by throwing his most expensive asset into the fire.
And it backfired spectacularly.
It really did. What was the specific damning analysis of Isak's performance on the day?
The language used is almost unprecedented in its severity for a player with that kind of price tag. He was described as totally anonymous.
Also peripheral, lightweight, and ultimately lost within the framework of the team.
Just completely ineffective.
Totally. He completed just 11 passes and had 0 meaningful shots on target. Slot replaced him after 67 minutes, and the sources noted it was seen by many commentators as an act of mercy.
An act of mercy, gosh, for a player that costs that much.
It's for a player who is just clearly lacking confidence in any sort of direction.
And the aggregate fan rating, that user rating, it tells the brutal truth here.
It really does. Isak earned the lowest user rating of any player who started the match. A miserable 1.97 out of 10.
Under 2.
When you commit $125 million, you expect leadership, you expect impact. What they got was a player who looked isolated, unsure of his role, and completely unable to compete physically with the Forest defense.
This single failure, it really represents the biggest indictment of the club's recent recruitment strategy, doesn't it?
It's the poster boy for it, yeah.
And Isak is not alone. While he was injured for this specific match, we have to talk about Florian Wirtz, another enormous summer outlay.
$116 million.
And his output so far this season also just compounds this sense of, well, fiscal failure.
Absolutely. Wirtz, the attacking midfielder, has so far provided 0 goals and 0 assists in the Premier League. Not a thing. So when you have nearly £250 million invested in 2 attacking players who have failed to generate a single goal contribution between them, the narrative moves from just poor form to a systematic failure of recruitment.
And this is why the fan base is so frustrated. They see these incredible resources being spent, but not addressing the key structural needs of the squad.
Exactly.
Let's delve deeper into that structural critique. The fans are arguing the $450 million was poorly executed, that it neglected key defensive needs. What specific defensive attributes are the fans and analysts pointing to as missing?
Well, the primary argument is that the club bought exciting attacking talent, expensive toys, while completely ignoring the foundations established by the previous successful era.
Right.
The sources highlight 2 major absences. First, a specialist defensive midfielder. A genuine number 6 with elite defensive screening ability similar to what they lost previously and never replaced.
And second,
a dominant, consistently available center back who can organize that high line and, crucially, handle the aerial threat.
And the result of not having those 2 players is a total loss of balance.
That's the word they keep using. The whole team feels unbalanced, top-heavy.
So the team has lost its defensive shield in midfield. And the back 4, lacks the necessary organization, which directly explains the set-piece crisis.
It connects the dots perfectly, doesn't it? The lack of a true defensive screen means the existing central midfielders are constantly exposed, required to recover, which leads to gaps.
And the set-piece failure, I mean, the numbers in
And
that are damning.
they've conceded 9 league goals from set pieces this season already, excluding penalties. That matches their total for the whole of last season.
We're not even halfway through.
Exactly. It's pure evidence of defensive disorganization and a lack of physical dominance in the box. Murillo's goal was a textbook example of a player just easily escaping his marker because the overall defensive structure was just chaotic.
Now, amid all this failure, was there any individual player performance that offered even a glimmer of hope, or at least escaped the worst of the fan fury?
Only one player was generally absolved by the sources, Mohamed Salah. The reports state he was the one player who could hold his head high, maintaining a level of commitment and threat despite the team just sinking around him.
Even so, I saw some fans saying his end product wasn't sharp enough.
There was still some criticism, yeah, but compared to the rest of the squad, he was operating at a completely different level of intensity and quality.
But the fact that Salah was the highlight, and yet the highest Liverpool user rating was still only a 3.15, that speaks volumes about the collective performance.
It confirms the catastrophic nature of the failure. A 3.15 rating for your best player means everyone else was performing at a non-Premier League standard on the day.
And we have to expand on the other poor performers who drew specific critique. Let's talk about Ibrahima Konate, the center back.
His user rating of 2.52 reflected a terrible day at the office, but his poor form has been noted all season. This wasn't a one-off.
And the fans seem particularly frustrated with Slot's continued selection of these struggling players, like Konate and Cody Gakpo up front.
It's seen as a kind of managerial stubbornness or misplaced loyalty. Gakpo, for instance, is another attacker who cost a significant sum, but lacks that consistent intensity and end product.
Right.
The critique is that these players are kept in the starting XI despite providing very little, while players who might offer a bright spark, like the substitutes Federico Chiesa and Hugo Ekitike, are constantly overlooked.
Fans just want to see players picked on form.
Exactly. They argue that you need to reward form and inject energy, neither of which Slot seems willing to do, and that leads to these accusations of favoritism.
Let's look at Slot's in-game decisions then, which the sources suggest had a whiff of desperation about them.
Absolutely. The decision-making was, well, it was baffling. It betrayed a sense of panic on the touchline.
And the most dramatic example was Slot's decision to replace Konate, a central defender, with a striker, Hugo Ekitike.
In the 55th minute,
Yeah.
taking off a defender for an attacker when you're 2-0 down and still so early in the second half is a ridiculously high-stakes gamble.
It essentially throws all defensive caution to the wind.
It does. It was described as a shot in the dark. It just screams that Slot had lost confidence in his existing attack to score, so he was forced to sacrifice defensive stability entirely.
And there was more. The decision to play Dominic Shigavaslai at right back.
Yeah, an attacking midfielder playing at right back when other defensive options were available on the bench, that was heavily criticized.
Fans saw this as proof of a clueless approach to formation and player positioning.
They did. It suggests Slot is just trying to force players into roles they are fundamentally unsuited for, thereby sacrificing the very balance that the team so desperately needs.
This really highlights that the tactical system itself is being questioned now. It's not just about the individual players anymore. The lack of dynamism in the attack, the inability to combine, the absence of that aggressive pressing, it all points back to a failure to integrate a coherent tactical vision.
The tactical failure is profound. The sources noted that while the team can achieve these high passing numbers, the passes are so often risk-averse, they're sideways or they're backward.
Sterile domination.
Exactly. They lack the aggressive vertical penetration that defines all the Premier League's top sides. The chemistry is just gone.
The previous front three knew exactly what the others were doing.
Instinctively. They knew how and when to run for each other. The current group, despite its obvious talent, looks like a collection of expensive individuals who, as one source put it, have no idea how to run together and create space.
And the blame for that has to fall on the manager.
It does. Slot seems to have mistaken buying quality talent for creating a functional team structure.
Which brings us to the man himself. Section 3. The manager under fire.
Statistical decline and crisis talk.
This catastrophic performance and the subsequent statistical analysis, it places Arne Slot under intense, almost unbearable pressure. I mean, despite leading the team to a league title last season, he is now facing calls for his immediate removal. How did he handle this public humiliation?
Well, Slot maintained a certain professionalism, but his comments were very sobering. He took full responsibility for the result. He acknowledged the team is in a very bad spell.
He didn't make excuses.
No, he called the 3-0 loss very, very bad, regardless of the opponent, and he admitted that their attempts to adjust during the game simply didn't work out.
Right.
But while he was measured, the reports all note a visible strain. He recognized the severity of it, stating that losing 3-0 at home is just unacceptable at a club like Liverpool.
Slot might be trying to stay calm, but the historical statistical slide we are about to discuss is what turns his predicament from just a patch of bad form into a genuine historical crisis.
This is where it gets really scary for the fans.
Let's look at these numbers, because they are genuinely terrifying.
This is where the narrative shifts entirely. We mentioned it earlier, that startling decline. 6 losses in their past 7 Premier League games.
Matching their total losses in the previous 58.
That's a collapse rate of nearly 9 times the historic average. The speed of this decay is just unmatched in the club's recent history.
And when we isolate the results at Anfield, their home ground, the historical shock becomes even more pronounced.
Yeah. I mean, Anfield was their fortress, wasn't it? Their symbol of invincibility.
For years.
They have now lost 2 of their past 3 home league games. Now, prior to this dreadful spell, they had only lost 2 home league games in the previous 53.
53. So that sense of home invincibility, the psychological edge that the cop provides, it's just completely gone.
Evaporated. Opponents now arrive there knowing that the old monster is wounded and vulnerable.
And the sources, they go back to 1965 to find a comparison, bringing in the name of the legendary Bill Shankly. That puts this decline into incredible perspective.
It truly does. This is the first time Liverpool have lost back-to-back league games by 3 or more goals since April 1965.
60 years ago.
Think about that. 6 decades of competitive football, through various managers, good spells and bad, and they have not suffered this specific, devastating sequence of defeats until now.
This isn't just bad luck. This is structural and mental decay at a historical level.
It has to be.
What does that level of historical statistical anomaly tell us about the current state of the team? It suggests more than just fatigue or a few minor injuries.
It reveals a profound psychological and cultural shift. The cloak of invincibility has been replaced by this soft underbelly. The reports emphasize that the fundamental qualities that define the team's success under the previous regime, the heart and intensity, are just missing.
The famous Gaijin pressing.
It's lethargic. The relentless running has been replaced by passing for the sake of possession, and the entire belief system seems to have just evaporated.
And they relied so heavily on those intangibles, that heart and intensity, to scrape results even when they weren't playing at their best.
Exactly. The sources suggest that the few early season wins they managed were just papering over cracks that had been visible since August. And when the confidence goes, the collective effort just drops off a cliff. Former defender Martin Keown captured this perfectly. He stated that 6 defeats from 7 is unthinkable for a club of this stature.
And his verdict was pretty stark.
It was. The wheels are coming off. That's a powerful metaphor for a complete structural failure, not just a puncture.
Let's move to the inescapable consequence of all this.
Yeah.
The goals for the season have had to completely shift. Where does this loss leave Liverpool in the Premier League table?
The outlook is bleak. They now sit 11th in the table with just 18 points after 12 games.
11.
And crucially, their goal difference has flipped into the negative. It's sitting at -2.
Wow.
And they are already 8 points behind the leaders, Arsenal, who also have a game in hand.
So retaining the title, which must have been the expectation for the reigning champions, that's surely gone now.
The sources are unequivocal on this. Retaining the title is now out of the question.
And historically.
Historically, no Premier League champion has ever successfully defended their title with 18 points or fewer at this stage of the campaign. It's just never been done.
So the focus has been dramatically and painfully reduced. The fight is no longer about winning trophies.
No, it is purely about scraping into a Champions League qualifying spot for next season.
And given their current reduced circumstances, as one report put it, achieving even the top 4 is going to require a monumental effort from here.
It will. The league is just too competitive now for a team to simply coast back into form. If this team cannot immediately rediscover the fundamental qualities of aggression and defensive organization, the pressure on Slot will just intensify exponentially.
It's a crisis of confidence that's feeding a crisis of results.
And that statistical slide has created a genuine fear among the fan base that if they continue to mimic the historical lows of 1965, the fight might shift from the top four to something far, far less palatable.
Right. We've established the facts, the figures,
Hmm.
but the heart of this crisis is really the emotional reaction of the fan base.
Mm.
Diving into the supporter threads and online forums, the reaction is immediate, voluminous, and fiercely divided.
The dominant sound right now is the sack slot chorus. The anger is palpable.
Really?
Oh, yes. Numerous fans were calling for him to be sacked tonight or immediately. They were arguing that they had been saying slot out for weeks, suggesting these issues were not sudden at all.
And the language used is brutally unforgiving, making comparisons to, well, the absolute nadir of modern Liverpool management.
The comparison to Roy Hodgson is a truly chilling reference point for any Liverpool manager.
It's the ultimate insult, isn't it?
It is. Hodgson's tenure was marked by disastrous results and a total disconnection from the club's culture. One highly analytical fan even noted that if Slot loses the next game against West Ham, he will have matched Hodgson's awful record, but in 10 fewer games.
Wow, that's a damning statistic.
The fan base memory is long, and drawing that parallel just shows how emotionally divorced the supporters feel from the current regime.
But the anger isn't just about the result. It's about the philosophy Slot has imposed, or perhaps failed to impose. The critique is highly tactical.
Absolutely. Many fans argue that the issue lies squarely with the system, not merely the players, and their proof.
Let me guess. They point out that many of these players perform exceptionally well for their national teams.
You've got it. It suggests the talent is there, but the managerial structure is failing them.
So how is Slot's system specifically being criticized by them?
It's being attacked for being clueless and lacking the inherent aggression or fire or spirit that's just expected of a Liverpool team.
Right.
The specific critique suggests Slot is trying to implement a failed imitation of a high-control, possession-based approach.
I saw one very scathing supporter quote that was being shared a lot.
The one about Guardiola?
That's the one. It described Slot as a boring pass-back and side-to-side merchant trying to be Pep Guardiola.
And that just perfectly encapsulates the frustration. They dominate possession, but without any of the dynamic penetration that makes Guardiola's system actually work.
That critique absolutely nails the difference between effective control and sterile control. And Liverpool is the definition of sterile at the moment.
Precisely. They're achieving the high control statistics, but failing to leverage the dynamism needed in the Premier League. The lack of chemistry is central. That relentless, interchangeable front line that defined their success is just gone.
So the strategy seems to have been overly simplistic.
Yeah, purchase amazing talent and just put it out there, neglecting the necessary coaching, the chemistry building, the movement drills that make a team click.
And the result is 74% possession that never makes the goalkeeper work.
Exactly. And this tactical critique ties right back into the accusations of stubbornness and favoritism regarding team selection, which further inflames the fan base.
It's a vicious cycle, isn't it?
It is. Fans see Slot continually selecting players like Isak and Gakpo, despite their documented poor form and low user ratings.
While players who demonstrate energy and urgency off the bench, Kiza, Ekitike, or even young players like Rio Ngumoha remain sidelined.
Exactly. And the decision to persist with Konate, whose form has been consistently poor all season, is seen as blind faith undermining the competitive spirit of the squad.
Fans just want to see a meritocracy, not perceived favoritism.
And right now, they don't feel they're getting one.
This intense outpouring of anger naturally clashes with the faction of the fan base that is urging patience and loyalty, creating a fierce internal divide.
It's a profound conflict. You can see it playing out in real time online. The arguments for patience, they're emotionally resonant.
Of course.
They point out that Slot delivered a league title just last season, even if they acknowledge the infrastructure was inherited from his predecessor.
They also emphasize that the club is dealing with significant change and the emotional turmoil surrounding players like Diogo Jota.
Right. For this camp, sacking Slot now is just reactionary and short-term thinking. They argue the club has to stabilize and ride out the difficulty.
They believe the high standards set by the previous manager makes any change look like a failure, and that time is required to rebuild an entire philosophy from the ground up.
That is their core belief. However, the counter-arguments are equally passionate, and they dismiss this stance as blind loyalty. They argue that while loyalty is admirable, the evidence on the pitch is just overwhelming. The team looks like trash, shows zero signs of improvement, and has fundamentally abandoned the core tenets of the club's culture, aggression, fire, and passion.
And the most damning anecdotal evidence of this collapsing culture must be the sight of fans leaving Anfield early.
It's cited again and again in the supporter threads as the definitive sign of a cultural breakdown.
Because it just doesn't happen there.
It's an incredibly rare sight. Fans heading for the exits by the 80th minute is seen not just as disappointment, but as a profound collapse of the club's culture and passion.
And the reality, the sources conclude, is brutally simple.
The current level of performance is just indefensible, and Arne Slot is now in the harshest, most unforgiving spotlight in world football, regardless of his past achievements.
We should also just acknowledge the complexity of the team's mental state. We're focusing on the tactics and results, but the emotional weight of expectation, the pressure from those transfer fees, the internal changes, they surely contribute to this collapse.
Oh, absolutely. The weight of that $450 million spend is a silent killer. Every single player, especially the record signings like Isak, knows the value attached to them.
And when they fail, the pressure just multiplies.
It creates a self-fulfilling prophecy of poor confidence. So Slot's job isn't just tactical, it's psychological. He needs to rebuild the entire belief system of that squad.
But his own tactical choices are currently undermining his attempts to foster that confidence.
Exactly. And the sheer volume of negative historical statistics we've discussed just further compounds that sense of mental paralysis you can see on the pitch.
So as we wrap up this painful deep dive into Liverpool's crisis, the key takeaway is that the 0-3 loss to Nottingham Forest was not an isolated incident.
Not at all.
It was the moment that weeks of statistical decline, tactical confusion, and failing confidence all coalesced, plunging the reigning champions into a genuine crisis of performance and identity.
We've synthesized that the core problem is an inability to translate that dominant possession, that staggering 74% figure, into aggressive, high-intensity clinical results.
And this systemic failure is compounded by an unforgivable set-piece record and the profound failure of those expensive signings to integrate.
Absolutely. Arne Slot's man management and his capacity to find immediate, drastic solutions are now being tested by a level of pressure that very few Premier League managers ever experience, and even fewer survive.
This brings us to the provocative thought we must leave you with. Liverpool now sit 11th with a negative goal difference. The fight is no longer about the title, but the Champions League. However, given that this is a collapse in performance not seen since the 1960s, the financial question is equally pressing.
And this might be the bigger picture. If we look at the $450 million spent on recruitment, with the two largest signings yielding zero goal contributions between them, the question is no longer just about turning the tide of results.
The deeper issue is sustainability.
Exactly. Is the sheer weight of that vast wasted expenditure, resulting in a negative goal difference and 11th place in the table, what truly seals a modern manager's fate?
How long can a club afford to defend the system that is failing so fundamentally when every, say, £10 million spent this summer currently yields no Premier League returns?
The answers must come swiftly, or this crisis could deepen into an existential threat to their immediate elite status.